The first step is that he stands up. And I picture Jesus, he's by the woman, and when he stands up, I picture him standing up and walking in between those religious leaders and this woman, providing a boundary, grace. He protects her from her past. The choices that she made and the choices that were made for her. Jesus steps in between. The grace keeps coming as he protects her from those who are using her. Without Jesus there, she doesn't have a chance. She doesn't have a chance. And the truth comes out, and Jesus continues to pour grace upon grace as Jesus delivers the truth. And the ironic thing is that the truth he delivers is first and most importantly not at the woman. The truth is delivered to the religious leaders who are the users and the abusers. He says, let him who has no sin cast the first stone. You know, you've maybe made some tough choices in your life, and maybe things have happened to you that are out of your control, and maybe right now you feel really embarrassed because of what has happened in your life. Know that Jesus steps into your life, grace upon grace. And if you have been abused or you have been used in any way, Jesus steps in and declares the truth that it was not your fault. It was the fault of the abuser and the user. And the grace continues to come for this woman. Grace upon grace, like the wave of a sea. Then he delivers the truth to her. Not in a condemning way, but a way that says you can be free from this life. Promise from Emmanuel, God with us. Know the truth and it will condemn you. Wrong. Know the truth and you will be set free. Jesus wants to extend this kind of grace upon grace into each of our lives. Wants to extend it and say, know the truth. Know the truth, and I will set you free. Free from the bondages of sin. Jesus has moved into the neighborhood. Jesus is extending to you grace upon grace, like the waves of a crashing sea on the shore. Grace to protect you. Grace to give you truth that will set you free. And now to close, I have one story from modern day. This story is about a young woman who attends Church of the Open Door. She's a part of the 20-somethings ministry, which is one of the ministry I oversee. She has cerebral palsy. As a 26-year-old, she grasps Emmanuel, Lord with us, more than many people twice her age. I'm going to read a bit of her story because she wrote her story for me. I heard a little bit about her story back in August and asked her to put it down on paper. And she wrote it for me, and here is part of her story. She says, I was born on March 26th, but I shouldn't have been born until sometime in June. When babies are born prematurely, it is often a traumatic situation. I did not have enough oxygen going to my brain, and as a result, I have cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a permanent condition. My brain is continually telling some of my muscles to contract. So instead of working together, my muscles work against each other. This makes tasks like walking challenging. My balance is off. My hand-eye coordination is poor, and my reaction time is slow. I also have quite a startle reflex. I had an orthopedic operation when I was 4. A surgeon broke both of my legs and pinned them back together, and my tendons were lengthened. I was put in a body cast for 6 weeks. The results were great. I went from walking very awkwardly and not being able to balance while holding anything in my hands to having only a slight limp. However, by the time I got to junior high, I hated my body. I hated my body because I limped all the time. My feet didn't match. I recently read that it takes a person with cerebral palsy 3 to 5 times more energy to move. Factor that in with the energy it takes to develop during adolescence, and I now understand why I was always so tired. I watched as my peers showed off their talents in sports and theater productions. I coped by spending all my time and energy to excel in academics. I felt like I never measured up and never fit in. When I did try to reach out by joining marching band in 8th grade, my peers actually asked me to quit. I spent so much time alone for a long time, I couldn't say the words cerebral palsy without chest pains because I was so ashamed of myself. During my middle and high school years, our family attended a church that believed in miraculous healing, and I was frequently prayed over. I never received my miracle, and when I didn't, I was essentially told sickness, disease, disability is from the devil, and Jesus heals everyone. You just need to have more faith and pray harder. It was so awful because I already felt awkward about cerebral palsy, and this just threw more attention to it. I felt like a failure now in my spiritual life as well because I had prayed so hard, believed so much, and desired healing like nothing else. This young woman needed Emmanuel. She needed Jesus to step into her neighborhood. She needed grace upon grace, like the waves of a crashing sea, to come in and bring healing that was done by damage, healing for damage that was done on the inside, but by some who don't know better and many who should know better. She goes on and tells about how she finally grew up, went to counseling, and finally grappled with cerebral palsy to the point that she could actually talk about cerebral palsy without experiencing pain. She spent more time seeking the Lord. She read a book by David Johnson, who is the pastor at Church of the Open Door, the senior pastor, The Subtle Power of Spiritual Abuse. And she realized last summer that she needed help. She came to me after 20-somethings, and we talked, and I was able to point her to a couple of ministries we happen to have at Open Door. One is Restoration Through Prayer. It's a prayer counseling ministry. The other one is a workshop that we offer called Distorted Images of God. It's a workshop where we help people focus in on God and deal with the way our image of God is distorted by all that we experience in life. And God began to work a miracle. God began to pour grace upon grace. Later on in the story, she goes, I've realized that my relationship with the Lord is not based on works. Although the Lord has prepared works in advance for us to do, the initial transforming work needs to come from Him. I am so thankful for the Lord's sovereign will. Listen to the grace upon grace come out of this young woman. I struggled for so long wondering why I was never healed and thought for sure that God had gotten it wrong. Looking at the big picture, if God had to make a decision between letting me fit in during junior high and giving me empathy and compassion for children for a lifetime, I understand His decision to pick the latter. Thank God, I am not in the driver's seat. I also learned that I can live in two realities. Miraculously, it is possible to seek the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and still sit back and wonder in awe at the mystery of God. Amen. Christ is the healer, and I will walk with a limp for the rest of my life. I feel so much rest in the fact that both truths can coexist in my life. And I do believe my relationship with the Lord is being restored, grace upon grace. This is a work in progress. After I received her story, I emailed back to her, and all I could say is just, wow. Thank you for allowing Jesus to enter in. This was the response I got back from her. Do you remember what you said to me, Brad, the night we first spoke? You said that it's out of our greatest pain that God can use us the most. I really want to share my story if it'll encourage someone else. This is an area of my life where I want God to use it for good. The ironic thing is that I always thought when I first started believing God to heal me of cerebral palsy that people would be so amazed and encouraged to see me with a perfect gait, a perfect walk, that my story would bring glory to the Lord. That is probably true, but I find it interesting that the struggle that I have had is what is touching people's lives. Grace upon grace. Jesus, Emmanuel, has moved into your neighborhood, into my neighborhood. He is extending to us grace upon grace, blessing on blessing. Like the waves of the sea, Jesus is pouring His grace upon you, whether you realize it or not, whether you are alone at night crying, "Where are you, God?" or whether you have a perfect understanding of where He is. God's grace continues to flow over you. It is not about you. It is about Jesus. Jesus moving into the neighborhood. And like the young woman from Church of the Open Door, He may not change your circumstances, but He will change your heart. He will bring healing to your heart. He will change your mind and soul. He will transform you so that you can see that He is Lord Emmanuel. Merry Christmas. May you receive at this time with an open heart and mind the grace upon grace that Jesus has given to you when He moved into your neighborhood. Amen.